Hey there everyone, Video Game Cabinet here. Today I'm doing my top 35 favorite video games of the fourth generation. This is going to include Super Nintendo, Super Famicom, Sega Genesis, Mega Drive, Sega CD, Turbo Duo, and a couple of arcade games here and there. Um, just like with my top games of the third generation, I'm only including games that I've at least beaten on emulation, or definitely if I've beaten them legit, or if I've put a lot of time into them and made it through a majority of the game, enough to know that I would put it in my favorites list. Once again, this list is subject to change. This is just how I feel today. I could change my mind definitely in 6 months, in a year, tomorrow. I'm sure as soon as I post the thing, I'm already going to want to make adjustments, but it's just how I feel right now. I'm going to do my best. Hell, after posting a couple days ago, the third generation, I'm already seeing things that I want to slightly massage to that. So this list will always be changing, but as you get further up, as I get further up higher in the list, I can say that I get a lot more concrete and confident about where I place the games. But towards the bottom, I could almost throw some of these games up in any order, and they would be fine. But anyways, yes, again, for a timestamp, this is October of 2023. This is what I feel are the top 35 best/favorite games for me of the fourth console generation. Number 35, I am giving to Magical Poppin'. We never got this one here in the United States. It's for Super Famicom only, but this is a great little gem for the system. It's got really cartoony anime graphics. There's light Metroidvania elements. There's some good platforming. The deeper you go into the game, and it's just got a really cool, cutesy anime vibe to it, and it's a lot of fun. Number 34, I'm giving to Mortal Kombat 2. I remember this game was just so much fun back in the arcades, and this Super Nintendo port was phenomenal. It had all the blood and gore of the arcade version, and this game in this series back in the 90s was just really, really groundbreaking. For its violence and its fun, and it's not as deep as some of the other fighters that came around that time or later, but it's still just so much fun. The characters are badass. The graphics were really cool for the time, the way they were realistic, and it was just a really, really fun game. Number 33, I'm giving to Macross Scrambled Valkyrie for the Super Famicom. This is another game. It's a shmup that we never got here in the States, but it might be the best shmup that I've played on the Super Nintendo Super Famicom. I haven't played all of them, but this one is really impressive. There's no slowdown. It's fast gameplay. It's beautiful graphics. It's cool music. It's a lot of action. It's just a great all-around, really polished shmup. Number 32, I am giving to Sonic CD. This is hands down the best Sonic the Hedgehog game ever made. There's time travel. There's anime cutscenes, and the music in both the Japanese and the American versions, I think, are great. I love the soundtrack in this game. I grew up playing the American version, and I thought the music was great. And then later on, I heard the Japanese and European music, and that was really good too. It was great. This game it's the best Sonic game ever made, and it's a lot of fun. And I love the way that the levels change depending on which Chaos Emeralds you get and how you time travel. Number 31, I am giving to the Terminator on Sega CD. This is absolutely one of the best movie license games of all time, with a badass soundtrack that was just incredible. And the levels you could explore, the shooting was amazing, the action was amazing. This was just an amazing run and gun game with a little bit of exploration, and just tied into the movie really well. The movie was great too, and this is just an excellent game for the Sega CD. Number 30, I'm giving to Elemental Master on Sega Genesis. My God, I cannot get enough of this soundtrack. The music just gets me pumped. The shooting, the gameplay is really fun. The levels are cool, they're varied, but the soundtrack is really what gets me from this one. It makes a very good game great, incredible. I love this shmup on the Sega Genesis. Number 29, I'm giving to Wild Guns on the Super Nintendo. This is an amazing gallery shooter, the best on the system, the best in the generation. It's a lot of fun. It's cowboys mixed with futuristic robots back in the Wild Wild West. What's not to love? It's a lot of fun. It's challenging, even on easy mode. This is a wonderful game. I beat it a couple years ago, and it was very hard, but a lot of fun and a lot of action. Great heart-pumping music and just awesome graphics. Number 28, I'm giving to Snatcher for the Sega CD. This is quite the collector's item, but it's a great game too. Normally, I'm not into visual novels like this, but this was a great game, and it was really fun being a detective, and the light gun segments sprinkled throughout, and the atmosphere is just wonderful. And really what makes the game fantastic is the storyline, and the voice acting for its time was really good, but the way it all ties up in the third act, this was just an awesome game that, you know, felt like a mix of Terminator and Blade Runner in the future with detective work, and it was just so much fun. Very unique title. Number 27, I'm giving to Turtles in Time. This game was just too much fun in the arcades, and the Super Nintendo port was incredible, and this is just hands down the best beat 'em up I think probably ever made. It's just so much fun with the 4 players in the arcade, or even the 2 players on the Super Nintendo. You just can't wait to see what happens next. There's so much variety with the enemies and the bosses and the levels, and it never gets repetitive like a lot of other beat 'em ups do, and it's just so much fun from start to finish, and the soundtrack is awesome. Number 26, I am giving to The Secret of Mana. This was a big one from my childhood, being able to play 2 or 3 players at the same time in this beautiful RPG with beautiful music. The action RPG combat was wonderful. You know, it felt a little bit like Zelda, a little bit like Final Fantasy. It's just a wonderful, magical game that, you know, it's a little bit dated now, but it's still so much fun. Number 25, I am giving to The First Shining Force on Sega Genesis. I actually played through this one recently in the last year. Really, really great game for its time, being able to control so many different players against so many enemies and moving turn by turn. The tactics involved, it's simple enough to be able to be easy to get into, but deep enough to keep you coming back for more and see it to the end. It's just a really, really great game for its time, and you know, things only went up from here with the sequels. Number 24, I'm giving to Final Fantasy IV. That's what it was called on the Super Famicom, and they called it Final Fantasy II here in the States. But this is Final Fantasy IV. I have not played this one in a very long time. This is going to need a replay soon, but I remember it being really, really good. The characters were super memorable. You know, the lead character especially was really, really good, and, you know, comparing it to the trilogy on the NES, they really, really took big steps with this one, with the storyline and the narrative, and the music is just outstanding, and it really, really was a wonderful game. Number 23, I am giving to Hagan. This is a badass action game where you take control of a cyborg ninja, and it just has an epic feel to it. The different weapons you can use, the gymnastics you can pull off are just badass. When I first played this game a few years ago, it took a little get used to a little time to practice to get used to the controls. But once you get the hang of it, this game is really, really fluid and just so much fun the way you can do backflips and kill a bunch of different enemies. It is very challenging, but like I said, once you get used to the controls, it is very beatable, and it's a lot of fun with an epic feel to it. Number 22 is going to Yoshi's Island, Super Mario World 2. This is another one I haven't played in a while, but I remember it just being a really, really, really fun platformer that was a great follow-up to the first Super Mario World. It focuses on Yoshi, but it introduces the butt stomp, and the way you can shoot different eggs out of Yoshi. It was really cool, and lots of just endless variety within the levels, and, you know, it just really, really fun, polished Mario game that focuses on his dinosaur friend, and I thought it was a lot of fun. Number 21 is going to Contra 3, The Alien Wars. This was just a badass run-and-gun shooter that took everything that was great about the original on the NES and turned it up to 11. There's just so much going on in this game, and it's very challenging. I haven't been able to beat this one legit, but I have gone through it on emulation, and you know, I played a ton of it on the authentic cart, and it's a lot of fun. One day I will have this game beaten legit, but it kicks your ass, but you just keep on coming back for more because it is so much fun with either 1 or 2 players. I love this game. Number 20 is going to Battl Mania Daijinjo for the Mega Drive. This is another one where the soundtrack just gets me pumped. Incredible shoot 'em up on the Genesis Mega Drive, where you can change directions, you can shoot backwards, forwards, and even go 8-way if you change your controls. And it's just so much fun with the 2 girls shooting and the sort of cutesy anime but badass feel at the same time. And again, the soundtrack really makes this one, and it's just a lot of fun from start to finish. Absolutely one of the best shmups on a system loaded with great shmups. Speaking of great shmups on the Genesis with outstanding soundtracks, my number 19 is going to Thunder Force 3. I know a lot of people like 4, but I believe that 3 is the superior game and the superior music. This is just one of the best soundtracks I've ever heard in a video game, you know, along with a couple other shmups that I've mentioned on this list. This music just gets me pumped, and you know, I can't stop listening to it in my car. But the game itself is just incredible. It's not too difficult, but it's very challenging. You can make it through with enough practice. It's so fun, so fast-paced. The levels are so varied with the lava level, other planets that you go to. It's just too much fun. Can't get enough of this. And another shmup on the Genesis at number 18 is Musha. I just can't get enough of these games. They are just so much fun. With the speed metal music in this game, and the varied gameplay, the varied levels, it's just so much fun. This is absolutely probably the best spaceship shmup on the system. Very hard to decide between this and the last couple, but for now I'm going to give it to Musha. This game, it's also a very rare collector's item, but it's a lot of fun. It deserves to be as expensive as it is. You know, it's just a wonderful, wonderful game that really gets you going with the music, and you know, it's just unforgettable. At number 17 is Shining Force 2. As great as Part 1 was, Part 2 was even better. Haven't played this one in a good couple decades. It's definitely in need of a replay soon, but I remember it being really outstanding and just a really, really fun tactical strategy RPG, you know, that again, like the first one, it's simple enough that a beginner can get into, but it's deep enough that it just keeps you coming back and provides so much depth for the entire story, and it's so much fun. The gameplay is faster paced than the original, and there's more soldiers, more types of enemies, and you know, it's just a fantastic game, epic game from start to finish. Number 16, I am going to give to Chrono Trigger on the Super Nintendo. I know this is a bit higher for some other people, but this was a fantastic, fantastic game. I remember when I first played it years ago, decades ago, I was a little turned off by the silent protagonist in a story-heavy RPG, but as I played it more and finally completed it a few years ago, I saw that towards the end of the game, the supporting characters take over, and they talk, and they bring all the emotional beats that I was looking for in a JRPG. And it really was a magnificent story that focuses on time travel and changing the future, and it's a lot of fun. There's multiple endings, there's New Game Plus. This is one that I'm definitely going to go back to and get more of the endings, and it might even rise higher on the list in time. Number 15, I am giving to Mega Man X for Super Nintendo. This was another big childhood game of mine that I'm going to have to go back and replay at some point, but I remember it being really, really fun, really, really badass, epic sci-fi, you know, with great action. Discovering the secrets in the levels and finding all the hidden weapons and getting the boss's weapons and everything else. I love this game. It was the first Mega Man game that I played, and I'm definitely going to have to go back to it at some point, but it's absolutely a classic. For 14, I am giving to The Lost Vikings on Super Nintendo. This is another big childhood game, childhood favorite of mine. I just have so many great memories of playing this with my cousin and making it all the way through, start to finish. It was so much fun discovering all the secrets, and they were hard, getting through all the levels and using the 3 different Vikings. They all played differently, but you had to switch between them and use their strengths and weaknesses to make it all the way through and solve the puzzles. I had a lot of fun with this. This is a very underrated, forgotten gem, and I think it is a wonderful game. For 13, I'm going with Dracula X Rondo of Blood for the Turbo Duo PC engine. This game, we never officially got it at the time in the United States. I think many decades later it came on the PS4 by limited run, but this game, this version, just incredible game. But at the time, this was the best Castlevania game ever made, and you know, we were missing it here in the United States, but it was just an amazing game. The way you could pick 2 different characters. I've beaten it with Maria. I haven't beaten it with the guy yet, but the music in this game for the time, the graphics, the size of the sprites, everything was just powerful. It was amazing back in the early 90s. This was really just a masterpiece of the Castlevania series at the time. At the time, it was the crown jewel. For 12, I'm going with Street Fighter 2, Street Fighter 2 Turbo, and Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. Street Fighter 2 and its iterations. Street Fighter 2 had such a big impact on the culture and video games, and it was just so much fun and still holds up. I played a ton of this back in the day, mostly 2 Turbo, but the other versions are really good too. And just the variety of the characters, the way you could pick different people. This game really was just such a breath of fresh air at the time. You know, it's hard to remember, but before this, fighting games were just not the same. You know, you could pull off combos, super moves easily with this, special moves. You know, this was just an amazing game that had a big impact. I have to place it high on the list, and it still holds up. And these characters are just iconic. Endless fun. And at number 11, I'm giving to Samurai Showdown 2 in the arcades. I don't have a physical copy of that game on the Neo Geo console, but I do have the Samurai Showdown anthology that has the first 4 or 5 games on here. But Samurai Showdown 2 is the one that I spent the most time with. I remember Samurai Showdown 1 being pretty good too, but it's been a long time. But I remember this being my favorite fighter of the 4th generation, even more so than Street Fighter 2. The weapons in this game, you know, the epic feel, the way the camera zoomed out and then zoomed back in as you guys got further and closer away from each other. The graphics were just so powerful in this game, and the atmosphere and the feudal Japan setting. I loved this game, and the characters were awesome. It's just so much fun. I think this was the best fighter of that generation, Samurai Showdown 2 specifically. Getting into number 10 is Gunstar Heroes. My god, this game is just too much fun, single player or co-op. Action, run and gun, mix of shmup here and there. This game by Treasure, it's Treasure's maybe Treasure's best game, and that's a bold statement. This game, the graphics were powerful, the action was intense, just too much fun. You could throw enemies, you could mix in different types of weapons. There were like 4 different types of weapons, but you could do different combinations with them, and it's just so much fun and just an unforgettable game. And this is what the Sega Genesis was all about. Just, you know, just cartoony fun with cool music, amazing graphics, and you know, this game was just, I loved this when I discovered this back in high school. I couldn't get enough of it. For 9, I'm giving to Popful Mail on the Sega CD. This was just a magical a joyous, wonderful experience. You know, it's very cutesy anime, but it's a lot of fun. There's little RPG elements here and there with action elements, and it's a whimsical, beautiful little story, and I remember this being just amazing. I beat it a few years ago. It's very hard at first, but once you get the hang of it and you upgrade some of your armor and stuff, it's very doable, and it's so much fun. Absolutely one of the best games on the Sega CD, and a very hidden gem for the system. And it's from Working Design, so it's got their anime flavor on it and their humor, and it's just a lot of fun. It's not overly serious. It's just fun. It's cutesy anime. It's a wonderful treasure of a game. And number 8, I am giving to Seiken Densetsu 3, later dubbed Trials of Mana, on this collection of mana that came on the Nintendo Switch decades later. But I'm talking about Seiken Densetsu 3 that came on the Japanese Super Famicom, that is the direct sequel to Secret of Mana. That game was incredible. I played it on emulation with an English translation a couple decades ago, and then about 4 or 5 years ago when the collection of mana came out, I played it on this, and replayed it on this. And I remember, as much as I loved Secret of Mana, Seiken Densetsu 3 blew it out of the water. I thought it was a marvelous game, and just so much fun, and the atmosphere, the graphics, the gameplay was deeper, everything, the story I remember being really good, and there was so many different combinations that you could take, because there were different characters to choose from this time, with branching storylines, branching paths, so endless replayability here. I'm gonna have to go back and choose some of the other characters on a replay of this at some point. Just endless variety here, and an amazing achievement that, you know, it took a long time for it to come to the States, but I'm glad it finally did. Number 7, I am giving to Final Fantasy V for the Super Famicom. I originally played this game in the late 90s when it came out on the Final Fantasy Anthology on the PS1, but many years later I also got this version on the Game Boy Advance that I haven't played yet, and I also have the Final Fantasy Collection on the Switch. But yeah, Final Fantasy V. This game, I remember the gameplay and the leveling up system with the job system being my favorite of those first 10 games that I played back in high school and early college. And the story wasn't as quite as amazing as some of the others around it, like Final Fantasy IV. Not quite as memorable, but still really good. And the music was just as outstanding, and again, that job system was incredible, and just endless possibilities, so much fun. This is another one I'm gonna have to go back to and replay at some point soon. It's a classic game. Number 6, I'm going with Super Mario World on the Super Nintendo. Man, this is an essential piece for any Super Nintendo player or collector, and I'm very fortunate to have it in the retail box. What can I say about this game that hasn't been said already by so many other people? I grew up with it in my childhood, just like everyone else. It was originally a pack-in with the Super Nintendo. Yeah, the Yoshi that they added in, the cape that you could fly with, there weren't like the tons of different suits that they had in Mario 3, but the upgrades that they did give you here were so useful, so practical, and some of the levels were so challenging. And getting through all, I forget, somewhere around 100 levels or so that you could get through, and exploring, and the overworld map that you could travel all throughout with so much freedom to pick each individual level, and the variety, everything. This was just a standout Mario title, and at the time, you know, probably the best Mario game. You know, it just really a classic game through and through that is just still holds up today with its level of polish and fun. Now we get into the top 5 with a tie, Echo the Dolphin and Echo the Tides of Time on the Sega CD. I never played the Genesis versions all the way through, but I played these two all the way through as a kid, and this is where the list starts to get very concrete, and I get very, very confident about where I place my games. And these two games are absolutely masterpieces that are very underappreciated by some, and just take me into a different world that I've never seen before since, this series was just incredible. The way you're a dolphin swimming underwater and you can explore the different levels, and the sense of discovery and challenge and foreboding in exploring the ocean, and in the first one, you make it all the way to the alien ship that kidnapped your family at the beginning of the game, and traveling through the Welcome to the Machine level and fighting the final boss just, took me on a journey that only dreams are made of. And the same is equally true with Echo the Tides of Time, where you go into the future and dolphins have evolved, and there's time travel. There's time travel in both games, and both of these games are just unforgettable masterpieces, and they are my number 5. My number 4 pick is Super Metroid for Super Nintendo. Wow, this game, I discovered it several years after it came out, but back in high school, and this game just blew me away, even though it was a generation old when I finally played it. And the interconnected world, what it took with the NES original and just upgraded it and improved upon it in such a beautiful, atmospheric way, and the sense of foreboding that you got here, and the weapon upgrades were so cool and so useful. Everything was practical, and just the sense of exploration and the tight gameplay, the tight platforming, the tight shooting, everything just fit together so perfectly. This game was just such a masterpiece, unforgettable, and just endlessly playable and replayable. This is another one I'm gonna have to go back and replay again, because it takes me back. That atmosphere of discovery is just, it's too much. It's just unforgettable game. My number 3 pick is The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. Wow, this was another huge one from my childhood that I replayed so many times back when I was a kid, and exploring the world, the different weapons you could get. This was just Zelda at its finest, and the original on the NES was so amazing, but what they did with this sequel on the Super Nintendo was just incredible. The way they evolved the formula and everything, and the dungeons, and fighting the bosses and solving the puzzles. The puzzles were just incredible. The weapons were incredible. Finding the different suits, that feeling of wow, and like whoa, when you discovered a new item was just magical, and very few games capture that the way that A Link to the Past did. The sense of discovery and the feeling of wow when you discovered a new treasure or an item, and the way that it changed the gameplay and affected everything in your character was just unforgettable. Now, my number 2 pick. I didn't think anything was ever going to leapfrog Link to the Past, but earlier this year, I played Dragon Quest V. I first played it on the Nintendo DS, which this version just adds party chat, and you can play as 4 party members instead of 3, but both versions are incredible. I loved it so much that I immediately played the Super Nintendo version, Super Famicom version, but on a Super Nintendo repro with an English translation, and I thought it was equally as amazing. This version follows the story very faithful to the original, and even as is in its vanilla state, this game's story was absolutely one of the best stories I have ever seen in an RPG. I could not believe it. There's a silent protagonist, but the game makes it feel like the story beats are happening to you. It makes you choose which wife you want to marry, and when you have kids, the suspense of waiting for them to be born is just, it's very personal and emotional. That's what I can say about the storyline in this game. It just feels personal and emotional to me, to you, as you play it. It's just incredible, and the adventure, the way that it goes through the main character's lifetime, starting as a kid and then flash forwarding to when he's a young adult and then a little bit older adult after he has kids. The way it goes between 3 different timelines, this game is just unforgettable. And I've already played both versions once. I already want to replay one of them again and marry a different wife, you know. In this I married 2 different wives, but this one adds a 3rd wife. You know, this game is just a masterpiece, and I can see why this series is so highly regarded in Japan now. After playing this and after playing 4, you know, incredible game, masterpiece. And my number 1 game of the 4th generation is and always will be Final Fantasy VI for the Super Famicom, also known as Final Fantasy III on the Super Nintendo. This game, I played it right after playing Final Fantasy VII on the PS1, which at the time, that was my favorite game, and I gotta say that this one was equally as good. And this is pinnacle Final Fantasy. The gameplay, the characters, oh my god, unforgettable characters. The music just has a magic about it that just sucks me in every time. What an epic tale, and the villain was great too, but the main party of heroes here and the music was just unforgettable, masterpiece, 10 out of 10. This is the pinnacle of this generation, and I cannot give enough love to this game and what an impact it had on me back when I played it in high school, and just made me a fan of the series forever. This and 7 did that, and you know, it's just such an epic game that you know, I would love to replay this one again at some point too, forever. It's a masterpiece. It's one of the best games ever made, and the story and the characters will just take your breath away and capture and steal your heart and everything. This game, you know, I can't sing enough praises about it. So there you have it, guys. That is my top 35 video games of the 4th generation. Man, this was a tough list to really nail down, except maybe the top few there. This, like I said last time, with the 3rd generation list, this will be massaged over time. But as of today, in October 2023, this is how I feel right now. You know, it's tough, but yeah, these top 5 games, definitely I rate a perfect 10 out of 10. Final Fantasy VI, DQ5, Link to the Past, Super Metroid, and Echo the Tides of Time. Those are 10 out of 10s, like without question. And then down here, you know, 9.5 close to 10. Towards the top here, Super Mario World, Final Fantasy V, Sega Densetsu 3, Popful Mail, those are really good. Gunstar Heroes, Samurai Showdown 2, Street Fighter 2 Turbo, Rondo of Blood. This is continuing the 9.5s. Lost Vikings, Mega Man X, Chrono Trigger, Shining Force 2, Musha, Thunder Force 3, Battl Mania Dejinjo, Contra 3, Mario World 2, and Hagan. You know, those are super strong 9.5s at the beginning. Maybe like nudge to a 9.5, close to a 9 towards the end there. And then from here, 9, close to a 9.5, you know, Final Fantasy IV, Shining Force, Secret of Mana, Turtles in Time, Snatcher, Wild Guns, Elemental Master, Terminator CD, Sonic CD, and Macross Scrambled Valkyrie. You know, I'll give those 9s, and then 8.5 to Mortal Kombat 2 and Magical Poppin'. Yeah, so that's my list of my favorite games of the 4th generation. And that's it. Have a good night. And one more thing I just want to mention at the end, just like I mentioned in the last video, there's still many more games in this generation that I haven't played yet, or I haven't played enough of yet to put in my top list. So once again, this will all be massaged over time. Specifically, this one, R-Type 3, looks great. Haven't played enough of it yet to place it on the list. And UN Squadron, that's another one that looks good. You know, so there's a lot of games. This list will evolve over time. But yeah, like I said, that's it for now. Have a good night.